I'm Jen, the Education Program Coordinator with CNPS, and with me today is Maya, who's been talking a little bit about the heat. Maya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Maya Argamon, and I am the Horticulture Senior Program Coordinator at CNPS. And it's really, like I was saying when we first started, I feel like this is a really relatable topic right now, given all the heat the whole state is experiencing. And, this is the perfect time to really get into ditching your lawn and converting it to native plants. So I'm really excited that all of you are joining us. And like I said earlier, feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourself, and also the Q&A, and I will be checking it throughout the webinar. So
Right. And today's webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the CNPS YouTube page within a few days. So if you need to leave early, or you're just so excited to watch the webinar again and again, please check our YouTube page for the recording in a few days. So today we're going to be talking a lot about native plants, of course. So before we get started with our presentations about lawn replacements, I do want to share a valuable gardener resource with all of you, our Bloom California campaign. So we're just going to take a look at our video.
With native plants, we can grow a beauty unique to California while supporting wildlife and saving precious natural resources. California Native Plant Society's Bloom California campaign connects gardeners like you with beautiful, bold, easy to care for native plants. From a curated plant list to garden inspiration for every style and space, and nursery locator to track down your new plants, Bloom California has it all. Get growing with Bloom California, native plants for a bright tomorrow. Learn more at bloomcalifornia.org. With native plants, we can grow a beauty unique to California while supporting wildlife and saving.
All right. So we're so excited today to focus in on the topic of lawn replacements this month. And today we have three wonderful, knowledgeable speakers here to share more about their experience with lawn replacement. So here is our schedule for today. And first up, I'd like to introduce Jack Smith. So Jack Smith is the Ecological Restoration and Nursery Manager with Tree People. Jack grew up in Southeast LA, riding bikes, skateboarding, and running around the parks. He worked customer service jobs even after graduating with a philosophy degree, until he realized that he was needed to work outside on problems with nature-based solutions. Jack caught the volunteer bug with the Newport Bay Conservancy, doing habitat restoration, kayak and outrigger tours, and marine wildlife inventory. Now Jack is the Ecological Restoration and Nursery Manager at Tree People, working to supply our local mountains, parks, and communities with clean grown native plants. So I'd like to welcome Jack, who will be first up to share his presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second to allow Jack to share.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you for inviting me. Can you see my screen okay? Oops.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Sweet.
Oh, wait, no, we can't. Sorry. We can see your face. Let me make you co-host. 1 second. It's not a webinar without a technical difficulty. Okay.
Right.
So now I think you're good
You can see my screen okay?
No, not yet.
All right. I'm hitting slideshow. I've only done a couple.
So on the bottom, there's the share screen in the bottom center of the
Oh, duh.
Zoom. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Okay, how about now?
Not yet. On my end, I can't see. So if you're on the Zoom.
Dang it. Let's see here. Let's do a log call. Do you? Dang it. Let me know if it comes up.
Here you have. So do you see at the bottom where it says share screen?
Yeah.
And
I hit that.
Okay.
I'm getting desktop and say yes. Open. Yes. Hmm.
Jen, do you have access to, did you send Jack?
What if
did you
I
have-
share this presentation with you?
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds
I'm
I'm
great.
so sorry about that.
no, it's all good. Maybe we could have someone, I mean.
All right,
mm,
there you go, Jen. You should have that.
Okay.
let's see.
We're just building the suspense of the presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
This will eat into my time, not the other panelists' time. I'm so sorry about this. It's so embarrassing.
No, it's
All
all
right.
it's all good.
I got it up. Jack, just let me know when you want me to switch slides and everything. But
Okay, cool. Everybody can see it now? Yay! All right.
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, it's
Okay.
all good. It happens to everyone. It's
Yes.
yeah.
So, as Jen said, my name is Jack Smith, he, him pronouns. I live and work on the ancestral land of the Tongva, Gabrielino, Kizh, Tataviam, and Chumash people here in Los Angeles. And we're looking at my yard. I'm going to tell you about some plants that are super tough, that are generally available, easy to grow, easy to care for, and provide the most benefit for your open spaces, pollinators, wildlife, and your neighbors in your community. So we're looking at my yard over here in Highland Park. My landlord said he won't raise rent if I take care of the yard. And he didn't know that I was a native plant person. So I was like, if I take care of the yard, I feel like that was open to interpretation. So I killed it and I put in a bunch of native plants. And so this is what I did during pandemic. You can see on the left, that's where I got started. It actually wasn't grass, it was a bunch of weeds, clover, fillery, prickly lettuce, and things like that that are invasive. And then on the right, I took that picture this morning. And so first, a lot of the neighbors, like I have like the wild house, and but even the neighbors who have the more cookie cutter, grass or the xeriscape yards, they love my rocks. I'll say one tip about getting free rocks ethically is that you can go to like construction sites and stuff like that, talk to somebody on the site and just ask them if they have any rocks. Usually they have a pile of them and they are going to have to pay to dispose of them. So you can get some really cool locally sourced free rocks that way, or branches, things like that, that provide nice features for your plants, especially when you first plant them. A nursery rock or a nursery something that will help provide a little bit of shade, like here, where it's super sunny, I put it on the south or southwest side of a new plant so that, I don't have to give it as much water. It gives a little bit of shade, creates a little micro habitat there. Okay, ready for next slide. Cool. So California buckwheat Eriogonum fasciculatum. I think everybody should have one of these, or actually more than one. Put multiple in your yard, but it is an iconic plant of our chaparral, and so many pollinators visit this one. I love the site Calscape, and on there it estimates around 40 to 50 different pollinators that we know of visit this plant. And at this time of year, usually their seed heads are like a rusty color, rusty reddish brown, but it's just so fun to be able to interact with this plant and see all the different pollinators. You can see it grows all over. Here we have in the middle, we have a little monkey flower neighbor next to it with a green link spider waiting for one of those pollinators. And then on the right, we have a couple of square spotted blues, and they're on a date right now, or they were when I took this picture. And so that's what's going on there. Next slide, please. Okay, bladderpod, Paratoma arborea. This one is also great because it's pretty much flowering all year round. When the flowers are pollinated and they go to seed, it just makes new ones. So it's really great. As my neighbor found out when she went to take a smell of it, it does have a mildly unpleasant odor, but it doesn't like waft around. It doesn't make your house smell or anything like that. It's just not something that, you wouldn't want your deodorant to smell like that. But it looks great, and it's drought tolerant. It's super easy to grow, and it becomes like a nice shrubby mound. So it takes up a good amount of space where you otherwise would have a lawn. All right, next slide, please. This one is one of my favorite. It's a coyote brush, or Baccharis pilularis, and they're a dioecious. So we're looking at the female on the right. the male has skinnier flower or seed heads, and so flowers. This one's great because it's super drought tolerant, tough, and also for people who really, they want a lot of privacy or they want to hedge in between their neighbors' yards or whatever it is. This one can take a pruning really well. It's super full sun, low water usage, also supports a lot of wildlife. The one on the left here is in the park that I'm in, Coldwater Canyon Park, and that was taken today. So even on this, during this oppressive heat wave, it's evergreen and providing lots of shade and refuge for wildlife. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is an untraditional choice, Ambrosia silistachia, and there's a couple other things on the left there. One of the reasons that I picked this plant for my yard space, in an alley near my house, I saw that the landscapers were trying to kill this one, and it's just invincible. You can't kill it. It grows by rhizomes. It also apparently grows by seeds, although I've only done it from cuttings, but I didn't buy it. I just took a little bit of the root, transplanted it in the yard, and it can become quite dominant as a ground cover. It also is flowering right now in the heat of summer, and then it goes winter deciduous or winter dormant. And but yeah, really, really happy little guy. I will say that it could be considered mildly allergenic, so I don't have it right up against the house, but in the yard where I'm not, where I don't need access, I don't need to walk around, it's great there. And if it does, when you require some maintenance, you would need to wear long sleeve shirts and gloves. Well, actually, yeah, long sleeve shirt for sure, because it is a little bit hairy and it can be irritating to the skin. On the left, I just broadcasted a bunch of seeds in the foreground there, that sacred datura, of course. I really like sacred datura, datura wrightii. And one of the reasons is that it's also super tough, native to Los Angeles. There's one that I pass every day on the 101, on the median of the 101 freeway, and it's just getting roasted, and it just couldn't be happier in a crack on the sidewalk. I love super tough plants like this. The flowers are gorgeous, and it is psychoactive, but we used to have one that the kids would interact with here at our eco tours, and nobody ever started hallucinating during a tour. So as long as you don't ingest it or smoke it, you won't have a weird day. And then we have, I got some purple needlegrass there and Artemisia californica, some sagebrush. Again, I just broadcasted that in the yard. The seeds are super readily available and easy to grow. And as long as you time it before rain, when we get rain, then you'll have a nice, happy community of plants there. I will say a cautionary tale. I removed some English ivy from that fence behind it. And then this invasive morning glory took over, which is super itchy and dominant, and it's annoying. So yeah, I would say that I would prefer the English ivy here. I'm actually trying to get some grapes, California grape, established on this wall, but it's old for sure. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, coastal milton bush. This one is on the right. That's at my house too, and where I rent. And even during this heat wave, it's actually pushing up its first flowers on the left. That's at a restoration site over at Zebyarovslavsky, Las Virgenes, LA River Greenway. That's what it is. Another nice ground cover, summer flowering, easy to grow and easy to prune and maintain. Yeah, I don't see this in a lot of yards, and I think it should be changed. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a list of things that I wish I had time to talk about. And so if you didn't know any of these ones, but they're also, all of them are very easy to grow. Toyon, laurel sumac, lemonade berry, sugarbush, the oaks. One thing that I do with a lot of my plants is when I'm planting something, I'll just direct sow an acorn. And I have a lot of little scrub oaks coming up in the yard right now. And eventually they may outshade their parent, their nursery plant. But ultimately we want more shade, right? So that's a good thing. Gum plant, a telegraph weed is one that you should never have to buy. It's readily available at a crack in the sidewalk, super easy to collect. Milkweed, of course, with any of these species that I talked about, you can have narrow-leaf milkweed. You should plant them in clusters of 5 to 7 so that they can support monarchs. Mule fat, you can easily clone that. It looks great. I have mule fat all over the place in my house. California poppies are a super low-hanging fruit for the native plant community. Everybody likes poppies, super easy to grow. And then chaparral yucca, you should plant at least 2. because the monarch or the yucca moth needs at least 2 plants in order to complete its life cycle. That depends on. I'm sure I've gone over time now. Thank you so much for inviting me, and yeah, looking forward to hearing any questions.
Thank you for that great presentation. And we will also be sending out resources, including that wonderful list of plants that Jack included at the end of his presentation and all the other plants that he's highlighted. So no need to, quickly write down all the plants. We'll be sending out those resources with the recording.
Great, thank you so much, Jack. That was a really extensive list there. All right, and next up we have Kate Hayes. Kate Hayes is the design principal at Mirade Landscape Architecture and Construction. With nearly 10 years of experience in landscape architecture, Kate has worked on projects from coast to coast, from New York City to Sacramento. At Mirade, Kate's design build work bridges science, design, and education. She's passionate about integrating citizen science into landscape architecture and design, and believes that the power of landscape resilience starts at the scale of the individual. She's energized by the work with clients and communities to realize a collective design vision. Prior to joining the team at Mirade's design principal, Kate worked at Scape Landscape Architecture, DCP in New York City. She holds a master's degree in landscape architecture from the University of Virginia and a Bachelor of Science degree in Earth Systems from Stanford University. Kate is a registered landscape architect in California and Virginia and has been a lecturer in landscape architecture and environmental design in the Department of Human Ecology at UC Davis and an instructor in the Earth Systems Department at Stanford University. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Jen. And thanks you all for having me here. Exciting to see so many people on this call. So let me share my screen. It's incredibly hard to distill lawn replacement into 10 minutes. So I'm going to do my best. I'm a big fan of pictures and images to keep you all visually interested. So if you have questions, type them in. Hopefully we can get to some of them. But I'm going to zoom through a good portion of this and try to go big picture and answer the question of why is this important, and then zoom into some practical details as well. So let me view full screen mode. Okay. Loading here. All right, so titled my presentation, California Dreamin' Lawn Replacements, with the idea that what we're doing here in California is really sort of debunking the typical American dream of this sort of moisture-rich green lawn that doesn't really fit many of our ecosystems here in California. So start by telling you a little bit about Mirade. I'm the design principal here. We're a mission-based landscape architecture and construction company, which essentially means we're design build. We're a one-stop shop for all your lawn replacement needs. But our mission is to strengthen connections between people, native plants, and wildlife through design, construction, and especially outreach and research. And so, we are based here in Sacramento, and not here, we're all different places. We're based in Sacramento. So the majority of our work is really in the Central Valley, Sacramento, Davis areas, with a splattering projects in the Bay and even 1 or 2 in the South. We have 3 main branches of the company. We have our design build, residential projects. Lawn replacements are kind of the bread and butter of our company, but we also work on tribal lands with different Indian communities, some developers, some cities and state agencies. So that's one branch. We also have our mobile nursery, which is all about plant sourcing and making these California native plants more accessible. Talk about that later. And then lastly is our most recently launched nonprofit called Mirade Living Labs, in which we try to integrate more science and education and STEM education and experimentation into our design build work. And this all feeds on each other, right? Thinking about, how the research and experimentation we do with Living Labs can then come back and inform through data and analysis how we design and build our landscapes, while the Mirade Mobile Nursery is making these California native plants more accessible to folks who might not want or be able to afford a full design build service, and really seeing the garden as really our living laboratory and the social space where we can engage people through these different branches of the company. So just the way Mirade is set up is is really trying to answer these questions of like, why does this matter and why native plants? California native plants are extremely important in California because these plants have co-evolved with our native flora and fauna, insects, wildlife, and these specialized relationships have evolved over many years. And so bringing in, say, Mediterranean water-wise plants that you might find at Home Depot don't have those specialized relationships and don't support our local wildlife. So, building habitat and creating these performative landscapes through California native plants is just really important to the work here. And so, we think across scales at Mirror Day. And as you all are here, you're thinking across scales as well, right? We start with the individual plant. Maybe you only have room in your yard or your apartment for a couple pots of plants, and that's fine. The point here is that these little patches of habitat build up, starting at the individual plant to some sort of patch or swath. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a full garden. Those gardens add up at the neighborhood scale and create this sort of corridor of California, of native plants and native habitat for people, for wildlife, insects, birds, butterflies. And so we really think about how, when you hire Mirror Day, or, you do DIY your own, lawn replacement, that you are just one sort of individual, one garden within this larger component. And it's really the individuals that add up that make a big impact. So that's really the big picture here of why lawn replacements are so important. So why should you replace your lawn? Well, I had one slide in here, it didn't export, but first is saving water. We're in a drought, hello. And we are also in a major heat wave. And that relates to the second goal, which is saving energy. And energy also relates to cost. But these are the three goals here on the slide, which I take personal interest in. One is by replacing your lawn with California native habitat, you're really reflecting the regional ecology and giving your yard a real sense of place and grounding yourself in the larger region. In terms of, it's also providing habitat for wildlife, like I mentioned. Your landscape becomes performative and productive. And lastly, engaging our curiosity and care, especially with youth and kids, getting them outside and engaging all five senses. So how do you go about replacing your lawn? 5 super easy, not really, but steps. I'm trying to break it down as simple as possible here. The first, like I alluded to, is situating your site in the larger context. It's important to always zoom out and think about where you are in the larger sort of ecoregion. And situating your site is also about analyzing the conditions of your site. Second, you want to set your priorities and make a plan. There are so many options out there. So what's most important to you? Third is design. And we're just going to touch on this because there's not enough time to discuss how to design this. Fourth, I'm going to get into some more gritty details about prepping the ground. And I've noticed there's some questions along those lines. So I hope to provide some insight there. And last, arguably the most fun, is engaging and growing. So first, situating your site. It's important, like I said, to think about the surrounding ecological context and the ecoregion and take inspiration maybe from that favorite hike you do in the adjacent foothills. So we're located in the Central Valley. And so taking inspiration from grasslands, for example, and bringing sort of bunch grasses and annuals into your site, into your yard would be one example. Which plants are native to your area? These are some of the go-to Central Valley plants, at least Sacramento Central Valley. Those are going to be different for every location that you guys are in. And what is a native plant, right? You can be hyper specific and go as close as basically as specific as a local area and only select plants that are sort of from your specific area, but you can zoom out, right? Maybe, I'm in the Central Valley, but, you could extend those boundaries and say, I'm going to take some, plants from Auburn or some from the foothills. You can also zoom out to California and say, I really want some buckwheats or some coastal plants. So bring those in, right? These are all California natives, but they're not necessarily local to your location. And that's okay. It's important to, engage with what interests you and the plants and to experiment. And then, of course, there's the other Mediterranean climates around the world that have plants as well, but these are not native. Asking the question, what wildlife is native to your area? Are there certain birds or butterflies or native bees that you want to attract? And you can begin to select species to attract those that sort of wildlife. Is fire safety a concern? The answer is yes to many of us. And so thinking about defensible space and really using that as a way to approach your lawn replacement. So there's all sorts of sources about this online. Thinking about sun and shade conditions, really tracking that over time so that you replace your lawn with a landscape that's going to work. I have so many clients that say, oh yeah, this is shady most of the time. So we put in shade specific plants and then they're all fried. So really watch that over the course of the year. Thinking about different soil types. Davis has a lot of clay soil, and so we don't specify certain plants that don't do well in this sort of slow drainage clay soil. So getting to know your soil and finding the plants that work for that. Second, we want to set priorities and make a plan. So like I said, there's a myriad of things that you can do in a space where lawn once was. So think about what you want. Do you want this to be a functional space? Are aesthetics most important to you? You want your neighbors to be wowed when they walk by because it looks beautiful. Is human comfort most important? Is supporting that wildlife and creating habitat most important? Or are just the sort of water savings and energy savings most important to you? They could be all yes answers, but the important thing is you really begin to locate and identify your priorities. One example of a priority might be managing water on site with bioswales or a laundry to landscape type situation and reusing gray water in your landscape. So that's just one example of what you can do when converting your lawn into California native habitat. Other ideas to think of to start to structure your site. I like to start with the fun elements. Obviously, we're going to put plants in the space that was once your lawn, but also think about paths and patio and hardscape and different programs and amenities like these raised beds to help break up that space. Because the plants I find really perform and look best when they help to frame the spaces that you are going to occupy or move through. And then, of course, they're the practical elements. Don't forget about irrigation. Don't forget about potential utility work or hookups that need to happen to make this garden a reality. It's so easy to jump in and want to start planting, but you need to sort of take a step back and structure the site first. Then begin to diagram the space. These are, pretty diagrams that we did, but the point here is that, breaking the landscape up into biteable chunks and thinking about, again, how plants can frame that space. It doesn't all have to be plants when you move away from lawn. And thinking about how these layers all add up. You can draw over existing photograph. But I threw this in here because you can do this on your own too. I'm a designer, I can sketch, but anyone can sketch on a back of a napkin or a piece of graph paper. Budget is obviously an important question here, but just know that there are these statistics that, you spend the money up front and ultimately over a period of time, you are going to get a lot of that savings back. And do look up, the rebates in your area. The city of Sacramento has a river friendly landscape program rebate, and they're really designed for DIY type folks. The rebates add up to a couple $1,000s, but that can cover the cost of you fixing up your landscape, but maybe not you hiring someone to do it. You can also, help budget by not packing plants in so heavily, right? Minimize the number of plants and think of a longer timeline versus a more immediate effect, knowing that at the end of the day, the plants will grow in and fill in. It might just take a little bit longer. So I'm already over time, so I'm going to breeze through this design section. The point is go to bloomcalifornia.com and go through these diagrams that actually my company created and follow the rules here. This is how you design a landscape on your own. We've got some tips in here as well. One big mistake that I see is that people plant plants too close together and they don't pay attention to how mature plants get. So think about size when you're placing plants relative to each other. It's hard to imagine that some of them are going to get so big, but they do. If you're not sure which plants work in your area, go to calscape.org, put in your zip code or your city name, and it will populate it with all the local native plant species. Sourcing plants is another big issue, which is one reason why we developed the mobile nursery. But again, Bloom California addresses that concern and names all the different nurseries that sell a lot of these California native plants. And if you're in the Sacramento area, come check out the Mirror Day Mobile Nursery or host it, and we'll provide you with those plants. So getting into the nitty gritty, and I'm aware of time here, prepping the ground is the most important part I think, of lawn replacement. First and foremost, you've got to remove the lawn. There are many different methods. What we do is we actually excavate the first 4 inches of the lawn and unfortunately take that to the landfill. But the fact that you're trying to get rid of the seed bank and physically removing that lawn is a big step in that. These are the 3 most common weeds we see here in the Sacramento region, and they are pernicious. And so the main goal here is to get rid of them. There are 3 other methods. We're using more and more this hardwood mulch method, in which you essentially put 8 to 10 inches of mulch on top, and the idea is to kill the light, so no light gets through to get to that Bermuda grass and that nutsedge, and that mulch will break down over time and build up the soil and the activity there. Because we are on a tight timeline, tighter than say a year, we typically don't use the cardboard method. And I'm personally not a fan of solarization, because you're using all this plastic that is then just going to go into the dumpster. So if you're going to go cardboard or solarization, I recommend going cardboard. Just make sure you put 10 to 8 inches 8 to 10 inches of mulch on top of that. Because again, you got to make sure that light doesn't get under the ground, because ultimately you are still going to be dealing with this. You're going to be dealing with weeds coming up between the cracks. You're going to get nutsedge popping out of nowhere. And then at the edges, the weeds come through. People have different views about herbicide. We do use it at Miraday, and we believe that it's worth it, because at the end of the day, if you don't kill the weeds, then your native plants aren't necessarily going to succeed, and you're going to have a constant maintenance battle. So we call it nuke from orbit, and just get rid of those weeds, kill that seed bank, so that your plants can survive and provide more benefit. We typically don't amend the soil, because many of the California plants have evolved to do well on these nutrient poor soils. But if you do, you can do a mix of 50-50, which is topsoil and compost during the planting. Irrigation, there's several methods. We typically promote drip irrigation, although some people do prefer hand watering. If you already have a sprinkler system, you could keep that, but it's not as water friendly. So we install irrigation on a grid system, as you can see here, with the idea that it creates a matrix of water throughout the landscape. Do not do these spaghetti emitters going everywhere. I'm currently trying to take all of those out from my yard, because it is a huge pain, right? Just create a grid of irrigation. If something breaks, then you'll know, okay, well, these are spaced 24 inches from each other, and you'll be able to locate that leak very quickly. And secondly, you can add plants more easily without having to connect individual emitters each time. Then the fun part, planting the plants. I just thought this was a fun comparison, showing how much growth can happen in less than a year of planting. So this is a hedgerow at a client's property that we've planted in Davis, and it's growing in quite well, but it might seem super empty up front initially. Adding mulch. So I touched on this before, but hardwood mulch is the thing to add. There are all these different types of mulch. Stay away from the dyed mulches or the waste wood chip mulches. Typically the shredded ones or the gorilla hair have a little more splinters. When in doubt, go with a hardwood mulch, because that's the type of mulch that's going to break down and create, hold in the moisture better. Quickly. Also, you can do gravel or decomposed granite as a mulch, but that will oftentimes retain heat. So if you're not sure, go with a mulch. And then you got to go back to constantly managing the weedy lawn. So know that, turf has some sort of maintenance demands, but so do these native plant gardens. So don't expect, this to be like totally low maintenance. The landscapes that we have seen thrive the most are the ones where the clients are engaged and actively working on it. And speaking of engagement, this leads to our last section, which just talks about how to manage them year round. What's great about these is that they, the California native plants are sort of inherently wild, and what we do in our designs is create this sort of organized, wild look and feel. And you can really embrace that, or you can really manage it and manicure it. And so at a minimum, I'd say these landscapes need kind of like a cutback once or twice a year. And that is really described in this diagram that we give our clients. and I'm sharing with you today. So just ending on some final images. I'm way over time, apologies for that. Showing how this is a project we did at a local community center, starting with a sketch, ending with a garden, local volunteers helping out, a blank slate. This was lawn previously, killed it with a renovation and what it looks like now. Again, changing from lawn to this expansive garden out in winters. A small lawn in the back of a Davis residence. So no property is too small or too big. And here's an example where we used a Sonoma Gold crushed rock as a mulch. And you can see how that change over time has really happened. So, just to end here, really encourage you guys, to replace your lawns with California native habitat. And maybe, next time we meet, going above and beyond, you'll become a citizen scientist and really begin to participate in sort of the experimental side of everything. So a final inspiration image of a before and an after. So thanks so much. Sorry, everyone, for going over. Hopefully you got something out of this.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was wonderful. And I think everyone got a lot out of it. There's lots of chatter going on in the chat and Q&A. So it sparked some good conversation for everyone. All right. And next we have Audrey Pongs. So Audrey Pongs is speaking on behalf of Greenbelt Growers, a production nursery in Riverside, California. Greenbelt Growers specializes in regionally superior ornamental grasses and accompanying perennials. Audrey is a lifelong plant lover with a BS in plant genetics. She is currently a freelance nursery branding consultant and photographer. And pre-pandemic, Audrey was volunteering with the Catalina Conservancy. It was this experience that sparked her interest in California native plants and conservation. Welcome, Audrey, and take it away.
Okay, hello everyone. Give me one moment. Okay, so I've titled mine Live on Green Space because my goal is that everyone has living green space at the end of this and not just concrete or mulch or just xeriscape, that you can still have a lawn. So let's start with a little bit of context. As American as baseball, yards and parks dominated by lawns are about as American as it gets. Lawns are a gathering place, a social place, like you just imagine a picnic or games. And as we face increased stress on our limited water resources, the idea of a manicured lawn can seem gluttonous, but lawns are much more than a bright swatch of green. So yeah, they have some glaring negatives, but there are benefits to this useless turf that go beyond having a place to gather and play. So it's a big ask to brand turf as useless in California, and it's a big ask to ask us to give up our lawns. They're so essential to our culture, but do we have to give up our lawns? No, have no fear, native plants are here. So say hello to an unexpected hero, California native grasses. By making the switch from traditional turf to native grasses, we can preserve the societal benefits of lawns and ease their environmental demand, mainly by drastically reducing water needs and maintenance. So I'm going to divide this into two categories. I start with true lawn replacements. So those are for our traditionalists, the more practical people. And then for our more free form artsy types, there's a category I call urban meadows. And these are going to be less rigid, more biodiversity. When making the switch to natives, you need to keep in mind that there's an aesthetic trade-off to be made. Many of the available choices are susceptible to rust. They can suffer from pet damage, and they also may have dormant periods or may not have that characteristic lush green tone of a typical lawn that we're expecting. So we're going to start with our true lawn replacements. True lawn replacement is something that can be regularly mowed to a typical lawn height, 3 to 4 inches, and is resilient against recreational use. So the following suggestions, I want you to be successful. I want you to have a beautiful yard. So the following suggestions are very beginner friendly. They're bulletproof. A native gardener who's never really had that experience should be able to succeed. And they also are readily available. Most people who do offer a native turf option will have these species. All of these should be planted in the fall and spring, and they should be regularly irrigated for the first year because you want to give the best chance of survival. You want them to be able to compete with whatever was there before or any weeds that are going to be coming in the area. My first up is Festuca rubra. This is one of my favorites. It has a lush green look similar to what we expect from a typical fescue lawn. And this photo is from a project we did in Hollister. So if you look, the grass next to the building is the Festuca, and then the grass in front is just whatever was already growing there. And they wanted it to be like a seamless blend. So it has low water needs once established, but if you do live somewhere that's hot and dry, like the Inland Empire or the Central Valley, you will need to water. Some people will say that you can't successfully have this lawn, but this is Hollister and the photos are a year apart and it still looks amazing. So you can do it. Remember that a landscape environment is an augmented reality. So with a little experimentation in water, mowing, fertilizer, you can be successful. Don't get discouraged right away. Cold hardy, suitable for a mild winter. It needs to be mowed at least twice a year to stay healthy. It doesn't have to be mowed regularly, but it can be. And then it's for recreational use. So your kids playing won't be a problem. Having a party is fine, occasional gathering, but no sports, nothing aggressive. And we do suggest using the cultivar Mulate. It's very easy to find, and it's resistant to rust and more drought tolerant than just straight Festuca rubra. We also, for all of these, I'm going to suggest that you try to find liners or 4-inch pots when you do like a large planting, because you'll get a better, more even fill than if you used larger plants. All right, so Carex praegracillus. I like this one. It's lush and green as well, slightly yellow, but it has moderate water needs and is partial to wet environments. So if you live somewhere hot and dry, it's maybe not the best choice because you will have to water it. Like hands down, you're gonna have to water this one in the summer to prevent dormancy or even death, just to keep it looking nice. But if you do live somewhere coastal, it's a great choice. It's full sun or part shade, cold hardy for mild winters. If you're not gonna mow it regularly, you do have to trim it back once a year, hopefully in the end of fall to keep those plants healthy. It also can do moderate foot traffic. And we suggest using the cultivar Chisai because it's resistant to rust and other fungal infections, and it can handle drought tolerance and sun better. And again, liners are 4-inch. Sorry, I'm trying to go quickly so I can get you all the information possible. Next, we have Carex panza. So Carex panza, I'm going to give you exactly the same information I just gave you for Carex praegracillus. There is a lot of overlap between these two. They do have slightly different characteristics as far as aesthetics go, but they're genetically compatible and they're industry interchangeable. So both of these would be a great option for someone in a coastal climate. Next, we have the last one, Agrostis pallens. So this is a lawn replacement in its truest form. It's a bent grass and it spreads by rhizomes. So it's going to give you the best, most even fill. And it's also your best option for a hot climate because it needs almost no water to be successful, and just a little bit of water will keep it looking great. Supplemental water is necessary to prevent dormancy or death. And if you don't have shade, it's also your best option. It's ideal for the lazy gardener. So if you don't want to be regularly maintaining your yard, this grows slowly and you can trim it extra short. So we can trim this down to 2 inches. So you'll have to mow less often. It's cold hardy and can be slight freezing. And it's your best choice for recreational use, high traffic areas. Because of those rhizomes, it's able to fill in patches quickly and maintain an even look. But you do have to watch out about overwatering. It is very easy to overwater this particular grass. And then so loves to be mowed. Lastly, we're going to move on to urban meadows. I love urban meadows. So this is my second category, similar constitute lawn replacement that I just covered with emphasis on the foot traffic. You cannot walk on these. But most of the grasses on the next slides are truly ornamental, and I am partial to urban meadows because I love when a bit of like wild nature collides with our structured lives and you get this like small breath of chaos next to all the straight lines, and I think it's just gorgeous. Quick review on what makes a meadow plant. So similar characteristics between all of these plants are going to be that they're cold hardy for a mild winter, super drought tolerant, and prefer full sun. I do want to mention that everything I've just covered can be used in the meadow. So you can leave it natural, but they are able to be used as a lawn replacement. So you don't have to put yourself in a box. You can have the best of both worlds. First up, Bouteloua gracilis angel eyelash. So this is a California cultivar of Bouteloua gracilis. And what I'm going to say here will apply to basically all Bouteloua gracilis, but I just picked this one because it's beautiful and it's small. So this was found in the mountains near Big Bear. It's a warm season grass that's very drought tolerant. However, you do need supplemental water to keep it green and to keep that flowering season long throughout the summer. The only downside for Bouteloua is that it does have a pronounced dormant period in the winter. So you didn't kill it. It's just sleeping, and it does look kind of rough in the winter. So you do have to accept that. But if you water it, you can extend that flowering season, and it can be left completely natural because it's a small grass that stays close to the ground. And then we do suggest that you mow it once or twice a year, beginning of fall and beginning of spring. Do not cut shorter than 3 inches because you will damage it, like you will damage the head of the grass. So you have to leave some space there for it to stay protected. And it's ideal for anywhere in California. Then I have Bouteloua curtipendula. So this is going to be almost exactly the same information I gave you. It's just aesthetically slightly different than Bouteloua curtipendula, and its winter dormancy is not as pronounced. So you will get a beautiful grass, and you may want to combine curtipendula with angel eyelash and have that year-round green look that you're looking for. Okay, next we have Aristida purpurea. Love Aristida purpurea. So this is a multi-purpose grass because it can occasionally be mowed. So let's say you have an event center or somewhere where you do want to be able to use the grass occasionally, you can use Aristida purpurea. And then it's also a warm season grass, incredibly drought tolerant. You should not have to water this grass after you've established it. It should be able to take anything that you want to throw at it, and it's amazing. It gets roughly 2 feet tall. We do suggest you mow it at least once a year down to the ground, so that way it can come back healthy and happy and full. And it's ideal for anyone looking to rapidly fill space with texture and color in any climate. So it is a little bit weedy. That is a downside. It does readily reseed, so you may have to do some minor maintenance to keep it within its confines in your landscape, but it's fantastic. Okay, Calamagrostis foliosa, feather reed grass, beautiful grass. I don't have a picture of it fully grown, but it looks like a firework. It's absolutely gorgeous, an amazing accent grass. Cool season bench grass, so that would complement the grasses I previously discussed really well. It's ideal for coastal climates, but it is not ideal for desert climates. So if you are living in Riverside like I am, Central Valley, i.e. Yucca Valley, not the best choice because you will have to water it and it will just fry in the sun. But for those of us in the coast, mountains, great choice. It gets mid-sized, 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 to 3 feet wide. And again, trim it back once a year. 6 to 8 inches, protect that crown, keep your plants happy and healthy. Excellent focal point. Okay, last one. This one's my favorite. I saved the best for last. So this is Muhlenbergia rigens. It's a beautiful mound grass with just a fantastic texture and color, amazingly versatile. You can't kill it. If you kill it, I'll be very sad. Beginner friendly, warm season grass, incredibly drought tolerant. You should not have to water it after it's established. But if you do want to keep it lush and green, this is a personal preference, right? What do we want out of our yards? So if you do want to keep it lush and green, you do have to occasionally water it in the summer. And it's also a mid-sized grass, so it's going to get to between 3 and 5 feet, including flower spikes, which are these beautiful little delicate tan spikes. And then we're going to trim this back again once a year, no shorter than 6 inches. Because we want to protect the crown, we want to prevent die out of the center and keep your grasses beautiful. Pretty much bulletproof, no negatives that I can think of. So my last slide, putting it all together. Do your research, pick your plants, grow more grass. Those are all my top plants, and honestly, no matter what you choose, you can't go wrong. Thankfully, native plants are forgiving. Just remember to define your goals, be considerate of your local growing conditions when choosing plants. And once you pick your plants, just hop on the internet, use your resources, do a quick search, familiarize yourself with them. This QR code in the center here links to a page with the core information on all the plants that I've covered. And then CNPS also has some amazing resources as well, so use them. I hope you feel inspired and empowered to choose a living lawn replacement, and hopefully you have some relief knowing that you don't have to give up your lawn, even in the face of drought. Like, there are beautiful green options out there. We just have to make a few concessions.
Great. Thank you so much, Audrey. I think so many people were really inspired by your presentation. There was lots going on in the chat, so you may want to take a look in case there's any questions that you want to answer. So now we're going to be moving into our panel discussion. We have a few minutes left to get through at least some of the questions here. And yeah, let's just get into it. So I'm going to share my screen again and get into our panel discussion. 1 second. All right. Let me take this away. Okay, so one of the first questions that we have for you all, and you touched a bit on this, Kate, is what are some of the methods used to remove a lawn, and what are some of the tips that you can share about how to identify the best method? And I know we're all kind of coming from different areas around California, so it may be hard to share what that best method is, but any tidbits of advice that you can give would be greatly appreciated. And I did see some of these questions coming up in the chat. So Kate, if you want to start us off and elaborate a little more, or Jack or Audrey, feel free to chime in.
I'm happy to go first. Some of this is about time. So if you have plenty of time and are willing for your yard to look like a restoration site for a full year, then by all means, like, go with the cardboard and mulch method. I forgot to mention, make sure, like the photo showing, to really douse that mulch and cardboard with a lot of moisture so that it is completely wet and damp. If you are short on time and want to get things moving faster, then I do recommend the sort of manual scraping of the lawn method with spot spraying of glyphosate. And the idea here is to really target the living weeds to get rid of that seed bank. Both ultimately, your goal in any of these situations is to kill the weed seed bank so that your future is less stressful. So the deeper the layer of mulch you can put there, the better. So happy to answer more questions than that. But
And just to chime in on what Kate just said, make sure to take a picture before you get started. And if you want to do a DWP rebate, you need to get it approved before you start your work.
Great, good little tidbit of advice. Audrey, do you have anything to contribute to this question based off of your experience with grasses?
Definitely do a weed kill. So on the project that we did in Hollister, that's when we did last year, and that was probably our biggest, where we were involved in the whole process, because normally we just send the plants. But if you don't do a weed kill, you will be so sad. And you make your life a lot harder. So do take that time to take care of the weeds.
Great, you don't want anything to come back up and mess up all your hard work. All right, so we're getting into fall. I know it doesn't feel like it for a lot of us, but as fall planting season approaches, what advice do you all have to help people prepare for replacing their lawns with native plants?
well, I think going back to the weed killing situation, I think one important note, I think some of you, I saw a comment somewhere about you let your lawn die for the summer, which is great. You know, you're not using water, you're not using your sprinklers, but if you do choose to go the herbicide glyphosate route, you do that, that only works when the plants are growing. So you actually have to irrigate your lawn or let it rain and let the plants grow again for those herbicides to activate. So at the end of the summer, getting into the fall, your lawn is dead. You want to replace your lawn and you want to do it in that method. That's a really important key step, that the plant must be alive and must be growing for these herbicides to work. Otherwise, I will say here at Mirror Day, we do plant year round as part of our business. And yes, the plants struggle a little bit more in the summer, but you know, I think seasons are important, but you can really do this work all year round.
Definitely water beforehand. Plants don't need a lot of water, but anytime you're taking something from a structured environment where it receives regular resources and you throw it out there, you do have to water them in the beginning. So plan a little bit. What plants you're going to put together? Prep your area. Do you have good drainage? Do you have too much nutrients in your soil? Do you need to take some of that out? Do you need to add in some bark or some sand or some gravel? You know, improve your clay soils, condition your soils, and then water before and after. Watering before and after, at least working with a moist area, not trying to just dig straight into your hard ground, will make it a lot easier and will make the process a lot faster.
Great. And Jack, were there any pieces of advice that you could share based off of your experience kind of converting the area in front of your space to native plants? Were there any just little pieces of advice that you'd share out with all of us?
Sure. First of all, I'm a licensed herbicide applicator, and I don't particularly like using it. It's something I had to get for work. I hand weeded my yard. And when you're doing that, you prioritize it by species. So first thing I had to go was the prickly lettuce, and then I worked my way down to the things that were less obnoxious. And then I would say start with, because it can be a little intimidating to just replace the whole thing at once. So start with a corner or start with a shape or something, and just go from there. I find that makes it much more manageable and less daunting.
Great, thanks, Jack. Yeah, and I think we have time for just one last question, but I'm curious about this too, but what are some tips for designing a space with lawn replacement natives? What just, yeah, pieces of advice can you offer all of us when we're wanting to think about what our space will look like?
I think I touched on it some during the presentation, but really thinking about how you want to use the space. And that said, even, you know, you can think about as much as you want, and then you don't really know how you might end up using the space. It might change, right? So I think being really flexible and also potentially phasing can be good for several reasons. One, you know, to experiment with which plants are doing well and which ones aren't. Cost, right? You can phase in terms of your budget. But I'm a huge believer in living in a space and seeing how you might begin to use it, because that will then influence ultimately, you know, the design. So in general, I'm a huge fan of paths and a huge fan of small patios, because they can really help to occupy and ground or corner certain spaces, get you out and into your yard and away from the house. And so trying to program and zone different areas first, and then thinking about plants as ways to help frame those spaces, or you know, structure or create thresholds from one space to the next.
Great. And Jack or Audrey, any last thoughts concerning designing a space with native plants?
Yeah, keep an eye out for free rocks. I noticed that the mailman likes to cross the yard at a certain point, and so instead of fighting that, and I just made a path for him, and I don't know, hopefully that makes his day a little better. And yeah, be prepared to fail, and but also it's just get on a naturalist, look at something that's thriving in your neighborhood, and then help it grow. Especially where I live, The southern black walnut is being removed at an unsustainable rate. So if you have space for something like that, then plant something that you know is being threatened in your area so that the local wildlife can use your space as a little refuge.
So being a good neighbor in many aspects. And Audrey, any last thoughts or comments?
Yeah, just consider dormancy. If your lawn being green all year is important to you, or if you have an HOA that has like specifications, consider dormancy. Plant, things that are going to be alive and happy and thriving and growing in the summer, and pair them up with things that are going to be alive and happy and thriving in the winter. Or just try to think ahead and be prepared for that so you're not shocked when you come to a certain time of year and you're like, why is my yard not looking as beautiful? Because we have been conditioned to always have gorgeous yards with the plants that we currently put in place and the grass that we currently grow. So just, be aware of that, keep that in mind.
Great, thank you all so much. And I do want to get to our last slide here. I know we've gone over time. Thank you all so much for sticking around with us, and a big thank you to all of our presenters today for just sharing so much knowledge and resource with us about lawn replacements. I'd like to encourage everyone to sign up for our next webinar on October 6th from 5:30 to 6:30, same time. And this in October, we'll be focusing in on healthy soils to support native plants in drought. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you to our presenters, and we hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Everyone.